Good evening and welcome to ATL Prime Sports, powered by the Stables Network. I'm your host, JJ Jurjevich, filling in for the wonderful and the one and only Stephanie Stallworth, your ATL traffic lady. Joining me tonight is TC, and of course, Breck running the boards behind the scenes, Mark Mancini helping us out behind the scenes as well. Please follow us on Twitter at ATL Prime Sports. That's Instagram too, at Quarter Todd, at JJ Get You One, at Mancini Sports, and of course at ATL Traffic Lady for your lovely Stephanie Stallworth, who gives you wonderful, fabulous traffic reports on 92.9 The Game and 103.3 here in Atlanta. Please feel free to chime in anytime on Twitter or dial us up at 720-707-2699, meeting ID 179057108. Give us a call. Lots to cover on the show today. Dave Chohen joins the show to talk Panthers versus Mountaineers, discussion on the college football playoff committee rankings, Georgia versus Auburn, breaking down the Deep South's oldest rivalry, and of course, your phone calls. TC, what's up, my friend? How you doing this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Man, doing well. Lots went on. Trae Young dropped another 41 points last night in an upset win over the Denver Nuggets. He's the first player to have multiple 40-point games with 10 assists this early in his career since Michael Jordan and LeBron James. So pretty good company right there, TC.
No, he's a fantastic ball player. He's just going to have to start getting some help from some of the younger players on the team. No doubt the Hawks are going to struggle around that 500 mark. There's just no doubt about it. They're just going to struggle. They're too young.
Yeah, they are young, but I think they can probably slip into an 8-seed, 7-seed scenario if John Collins comes back and good things happen down the road. TC, what else you got for us? Any other headlines willing to talk about?
Well, let's talk about the Colin Kaepernick situation. He's going to have a tryout at the Falcons facility on this coming Saturday. The Falcons are not the one that's conducting the tryout. The National Football League is conducting this tryout. A lot of comments in regards to this. I mean, to me, why aren't they just having this tryout on a Tuesday, where all the other teams in the National Football League have their tryouts? They bring in quarterbacks, wide receivers, linemen, whatever. They have tryouts every single Tuesday. It's the players' off day, and the coaches bring other players for tryouts. Why are they doing this on a Saturday? The head coaches can't be there. The GMs can't be there. They're ready for a game on Sunday. It's travel day. So the question is, are the teams going to send just scouts? What type of representatives are going to be there for this tryout? And why is it, like I said, on a Saturday? Also, why don't they just invite a bunch of people to this tryout? Why is it just Colin Kaepernick? I mean, to me, you should invite a ton of people and make it a gigantic big
like
combine like you would in February. Yes, have a big gigantic combine like you do in late February after the Super Bowl. They are going to have a combine type workout for him. It's going to be a situation where they're going to ask him questions. He's probably going to take some tests. He's going to go through some quarterback drills and etc. So, one of the questions they're definitely going to ask him is, JJ, they're going to ask him, are you going to kneel for the national anthem? That is going to be a question that is going to be asked, guaranteed. So, I don't understand the timing of this neither. We're in a week 11, and he's doing this now. Should have done it 3 weeks ago when you can set your rosters. Plus another thing I have, JJ, with it is it's been 3 years. He's 32 years old. He said he's in football shape, been practicing 5 days a week. To me, the odds of coming back after 3 years, they're pretty slim.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, his last 2 years of football were not that good. He had 10 interceptions one year with 16 touchdowns, I believe, and then four interceptions one year. I think it was, or I may have gotten the year, but he had 10 and four interceptions. He had completion percentages under 60%, which is subpar in today's NFL. He didn't have the wins, so the not a lot of good football tape on Colin Kaepernick the last 2 years of his year. Sure, he had pretty decent passer rating, but overall the wins weren't there. They were throwing some meaningless touchdowns late in games in the last 2 years, except for the year he went to the Super Bowl.
He didn't
I
even
do
he
think
didn't even beat out Blake Gabbert, and seemed to his career went right downhill after
sure.
Jimmy
Uh,
Harbaugh left the
Yeah,
49ers.
and I got some other things to say. If you look at Colin Kaepernick and what he does, this is a normal workout for a player. A high caliber athlete gets a private workout, so this isn't anything new. TC, this does happen often. Mike Vick had a private workout when he got out of prison for several teams just by himself. So it's not anything new. But I will tell you this. There were several teams that were there. I think there were 3 or 4 teams that I know were there. I heard that someone said the Cowboys were there. Yes, I saw an ESPN article saying something about the Cowboys were there, and a few other teams had a couple of representatives there. I wasn't specifics on which team,
The
but
Lions were one of them.
the
Detroit is
Lions.
one of them. Dallas is one of them. A couple of those teams are part of it. But it'll
Yeah,
be interesting to find out who's going to really come. It's going to be a lot of scouts.
Absolutely, and we'll see what comes of this. But I'm kind of with you. I think it's like a publicity stunt. Why is it on a Saturday? Why'd they force it to do on a Saturday? Why? I know supposedly on social media, don't take this with a grain of salt. Supposedly Kaepernick stays in Atlanta. I don't know if he lives here or he's training here, but someone on social media relayed that, and it was quite a common theme. So I don't know if that's true or not, but maybe that's why the Atlanta workout was pinged for the Atlanta facility. I don't know though. I don't know if
Well,
that's 100%.
that doesn't make any sense neither. You got people flying all over the country. Why wouldn't you put it in a centrally located place like
Indianapolis or
Dallas?
something.
If you put it in Dallas, you got 3 hours to the East Coast, 3 hours to the West Coast. It's about as centrally located as you can get. Instead, the people on the West Coast got to fly all the way to Atlanta. The location absolutely doesn't make any sense. And here's another thing doesn't make any sense. They just let Colin Kaepernick know they're giving him 3 days in advance to get it together. He said he's in absolute physical shape. We're going to see, and it seems like the NFL, to me, in the back of their minds, is trying to right a wrong. I'm not saying the NFL's wrong. I'm not saying Colin Kaepernick's right. It just gets that feeling to me that he's trying to right a wrong. Let's go ahead and go on to our first topic here. The second meaningful college football rankings. Actually, they're all meaningless to me. They came out yesterday. Do you agree or disagree with the College Football Playoffs Committee top 6? JJ, go ahead.
Well, I got to agree with it for the most part. LSU's got the best resume, so I agree with them at 1. Ohio State's obliterated everybody, so I agree with them at 2. Clemson's undefeated, defending national champion. I agree with them at 3. I do think the committee's looking at Georgia and saying 2 top 10 wins, very quality wins against Notre Dame and Florida. You look at the loss against South Carolina, 4 turnovers in plus territory, 2 missed field goals by an All-American kicker who's only missed those 2 field goals all season long. You look at the rest of the body of work for Georgia, and they've pretty much dominated every game they've played in. So except for that one, in which it took overtime to lose to South Carolina. So they're 4. You look at Alabama, they're 5. They lost to their one lone tough opponent. You go to Oregon, look at Oregon, they lost their same thing. They lost their lone tough opponent. Everything else is very, very slim pickings. So Utah's right there at 7. Minnesota jumped up almost 10 spots to 8. They jumped ahead of Penn State, who they have right now at 9. Oklahoma 10, and Florida, Auburn round out the top 12. I gave the top 12 because it seems like sometimes those teams have chances of slipping in if chaos happens. Don't think any of that will happen. But for the most part, TC, I do think they got it right. You look at some other scenarios going down the road here. This thing could get pretty ugly. But, TC, what do you think? Did the committee get it right?
Honestly, to me, I'll say it again. It really doesn't matter. The only poll that matters is the last one. But since we're having this conversation, I would go LSU 1, OSU 2, Clemson 3. I probably would put Minnesota 4. They're undefeated. They just beat Penn State. They have. I would probably put Minnesota 4. I would probably put Baylor 5. I probably would put Georgia and Alabama tied for 6 because we're going to get the SEC argument. Well, Georgia had a worse loss than Alabama, but Alabama didn't have as two good as wins as Georgia. So to me, it's a wash. So I'll leave them in a tie. Oregon and Utah, you can have them at 7 and 8, and Oklahoma, I would put them at 9. And then after that, it really doesn't matter. But my point is, you need to reward an undefeated season at this point. That's why those are my top 5 teams. I said LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Minnesota, and Baylor. That's how I would do it. And I would put number 6, tie for Georgia and Alabama. The reason is these people are undefeated. They deserve it. Now, it's all going to shake out. We all know who controls their own fate. LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Baylor, Minnesota, and Georgia. Nobody else controls their own fate. Georgia does because they play in the SEC. If they went out and they beat LSU, they're in. LSU, if they only lose to Georgia, they're in. Ohio State, they win all their games, they're in. If they lose one, it's a question. Clemson, if they win all their games, they're in. But if they lose one, they're probably going to be out in the ACC. So Alabama, if they went out and any of these teams slip up, boom, they're going to be in. So, to me, that's how I would do it right now. I like how the committee is giving some teams like the group of 5 a lot of credit. Appalachian State's in the top 25. I think that's a wonderful story, and I know you do too, since we're going to have Dave Chohen on here, who, the voice of Georgia State Panthers football and basketball. We've got a Sun Belt team in the top 25. What do you think of that, man? I think it's great.
It's unbelievable. It's fun to watch. It's giving national audience to the Sun Belt. Viewing audience that hasn't been there. They flexed this game to ESPNU on Saturday evening. It's going to be a national audience, but we're not going to promote that. We're going to want you to listen to Dave Chohen, folks, and we'll tell you how.
That's right. That's right. They got a big game this week with Appalachian State. I mean, think about this.
It's the first ranked match up in Georgia State Stadium history. So, ladies and gentlemen, buy your tickets. They're cheap and they're available. But
they are cheap by college football standards. You are right.
But I do have to agree with the committee overall, and obviously they went with strength of schedule. Georgia, according to the Football Power Index, remaining strength of schedule 29. The 4 teams in front of the the 3 teams in front of them, LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, not as high as Georgia in terms of room.
Now, JJ, can I ask you this? You and I both agree on this. It really doesn't matter if they got it right now. The only time it really matters is at the very end, and it'll all shake out by all the games that are being played. It's all gonna work itself out. But the App State game is amazing because they beat South Carolina, and South Carolina lost to Georgia, and and Georgia State beat Tennessee, which tells me any given Saturday. You look at the other group of 5, if you don't mind me saying, look at Cincinnati and Memphis. I mean, these are wonderful stories here in the top 25. Texas, if I may say, JJ, they've got 3 losses, but they're 19th because of the schedule that they played and the respect they gave when they gave LSU a big running for their money earlier in the year. I think that's why you still see Texas in there. And, Boise State's in there. These are some really good stories that, is not talked about a lot nationally. We're only talking about, as Tim Brando would say, the playoff privilege or the national brand, correct?
Correct. I strongly agree with that statement. I've voiced my opinion to this with Dave. I said it's not fair. Why do the even group of fives play a game? Because they don't have a shot at a national championship in this format, and it's not fair.
They don't. They have zero chance.
They should. Now, it's not, to me. Yeah, sure, you can argue they may not win, but hasn't Boise State beat the big boys? I remember Boise State beating my Georgia Bulldogs and pretty much dominating the entire football game.
I remember Boise State beating Oklahoma on one of the wildest plays you've ever seen on the trick play.
College football.
And then at the end of the game, the guy asked the girl to marry him.
That
was awesome.
The most epic game ever. That was a great Fiesta Bowl, 2007. I'll never forget in my entire life.
That's right. That was 2007. Thank you. That was awesome.
It was a crazy year that year. Georgia probably could have had an argument of winning the national title. But anyway, we'll talk about that. But,
you know what? You're right, JJ. I mean, you could have an argument that they could have won the national title that year. It is an argument. There's no doubt about it.
It's a very similar situation, folks, if you don't remember. Georgia at this point had lost to Alabama, and I do believe South Carolina had bit them in the early part of the year. They won out from the blackout game at home against Alabama, which they lost, beating teams like Auburn, who was in the top 10. I believe they beat
what did they come within 10 yards that
team.
year of win it all? Very close.
Yeah, that was the same year. Well, no, they didn't make it.
That wasn't that year. I apologize.
They missed out on the SEC title game because I believe Tennessee went that year. But the argument arose because Tennessee had lost a couple questionable games and wasn't ranked as high. Georgia's 2 losses were to Bama and South Carolina, who I believe South Carolina that year may have represented the SEC East in the championship game. But I can't.
Well, whatever it is, feel free to dial us up 1-720-707-2699. The ID number is 179057108 pound. And join us on the college football discussion because we definitely want to hear from you. What do you think? JJ and I have given our opinions. Let's go ahead and talk about the matchup.
Actually, TC, I was going to say, let me introduce our first caller. We're going to go with
I apologize. Go ahead.
We have a caller on the line on our ATL Prime Sports line. We got Double T on the line. Double T, welcome to ATL Prime Sports. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing fine, and I am an avid reader at times of the Wall Street Journal, and on this Saturday's paper, there was a feature on the Minnesota football program and where the program has come from, and it was just the best story. This is like their best year in 100 years, and so I like to see teams. I like to see some turnover in the conference. Minnesota coming up like they are now. That'd be like Mississippi State. Challenging to win the SEC. There is, and I do think there's a little more balance in the Big Ten. Although I don't see why Maryland and Rutgers are in the Big Ten. Let's not even go there. Right? But it's just such a good. Do you know who Minnesota has yet to play?
Yes, I do. They have to play. Let's see. They have to play Iowa and Wisconsin, and I don't know the last game of the season, but they do have Iowa and Wisconsin. If they win those games, they're going to play Ohio State. And unless Ohio State loses to Penn State, then we have chaos in the Big Ten East. That's why there's so many games to go. The Gophers could lose these next 2 games, and the bottom would fall out. So Minnesota is going to be severely tested. Double team without a doubt. So. And there's just too much football. There's a lot of football to be played.
Yeah, that's right. That traditional game in the Big Ten is always Minnesota and Wisconsin. That's the game. What for the
final game of the year?
Is it Paul Bunyan's axe, or
Absolutely.
is it?
No, that's the Michigan State-Michigan game on Saturday. Is the Paul Bunyan Trophy.
Okay. Well, what is Minnesota and Wisconsin? They play for the old Oaken Bucket. Is that it?
I believe so. You know what? I cannot remember. I would have to look that up. But yes, they always play for some kind of axe. Is what they play for.
Yeah.
Some kind of axe. I can't remember at the end of the season. The Gophers have Northwestern they have Iowa on the 16th. They have Northwestern on the 23rd, and they have Wisconsin on the 30th. So they're going to be severely tested, and there's a long way to go before Minnesota gets to a certain situation. But Double T, what do you have in your top six? I got to know, because JJ and I differed a little bit. We agree to disagree, but it's really no big deal, because right now it's just for fun.
Well, the only comment I'll have about the top six is that you're going to have the people at Clemson always say they're underrated. And they're undefeated, and they've walked through their conference, sort of, I guess. And they're always got the coaches over there. They're always going to say they're going to be underrated. And now you're going to have the publicity stunts too. Alabama's going to start pulling some of the publicity stunts. So look, we had a close loss, is all we had. We need to be recognized more later. But I would at this point, well, you got to put Minnesota in the top four. Just even though they're going to be tested later on, they might not make it in the Final Four. But boy, just to get the publicity for that. But I think I did have a chance.
Did you have Baylor
to watch Alabama? I did have a chance to watch Alabama and Louisiana State, and I have never. It's been years since I've seen a passing attack like Louisiana State had. It was perfect. They shredded Alabama.
Yeah.
Anytime they needed 15
yards. Like the comeback by Alabama, Double T. I mean, you want to talk about some guts and grit. Tua Tagovailoa was just as good as any quarterback in the country. I know he had the turnovers. I know he fumbled the ball. We all know he played on the bad ankle. I don't know what percent he was, but you could tell when he fumbled the ball, he tweaked it right then. And, had he been 100%, maybe it would have been a different story, but that would take away the credit that LSU deserves to win the game. Let me ask you too, while I've got you on the line. This is my opinion. Now, we caught the recording real quick of LSU's head coach, having that, how his deep accent is when he talked in the locker room after the game, and one of the players recorded his conversation saying, derogatory words, and then Roll Tide in front of it. I didn't think that was class. I thought it was a bad move. What should stay in the locker room is fine. I know it's an emotional win, but we're talking kids here. I didn't like it at all. And what did you gentlemen think of it? Because I did not, I did not like Ed Orgeron's, locker room speech at all. I know it was a, quote unquote fiery moment.
Double T, take it away.
But I didn't like it.
I heard it. Now, I did not see this, but someone who watched the wrap-up of the game said that Nick Saban did not meet Ed Orgeron on the field.
I thought he did. Didn't you, JJ? I saw that at the end of the game.
I honestly, I was watching the game, and I did not see him do it. So
I saw him do
I didn't see him do it. So I was kind of wondering. And let me solve this for you, TC. Here's the deal. That was supposed to be an intimate moment. I said this to you off air. As a former football player, you're supposed to say these types of things and be able to get away with it. When the media is out of the room, that's the players and the coaches.
Right, but these are kids, man. They're still
kids. Not kids, TC. They're 18-year-old men. They're not kids.
They're still kids, in my opinion.
They're men. They're
like
football players, TC. What do you think they say on the field?
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you in regards to that. I just think there's a way to play,
look at the coaches on the sideline, man. They're you read their lips. They're
sometimes not.
Everybody curses. You look at Brian Kelly on the sideline of a Catholic school. They don't care. in the game.
Well, no, look, I'm
person-
admitting it, but what I'm saying is,
here's
you
the
know,
deal.
you're giving,
No, it doesn't give a kid a bad image. They've lost for 8 straight years. It's a frustrating feeling when you get your tail kicked in for 8 straight years. I mean, it wasn't even very close since 2011.
Oh, they have some close games. They played in the national title game.
Not a single player on that team had beaten Alabama yet. So, yeah,
well,
it's
that's
an
true. They
emotional
hadn't beat
win.
them since
So
2011.
the player should have known not to film that moment, because otherwise you and I aren't talking about this because we don't know about it.
Well, yeah, and I think that's better. I think
everything
that's
is
better.
posted. Everything is posted, so it's not classless. It's a football. It's a football
I
move.
think it's like I said. You win with class, you lose with class, and don't think if
All right,
Alabama
well then let's talk
sneaks
about
in
Nick Saban. Nick Saban, he had said before the game last year in a pregame interview, "I hope it's an ass whipping," and it was. He said those exact words, and I quote, "I hope it's an ass whipping."
But I mean, there's a difference using ass whipping than using the F word.
Dan Mullen wouldn't say Ole Miss's name when he was at Mississippi State. He'd say, "Call it to school." It goes around, whether you curse with it or not. It goes around. You in the locker room is another statement. It's unbelievable. Double T.
No, I mean, look, there are two sides of the story, and I respect what you're saying. I just would handle it differently. That's all. I mean, everybody's different, and he handled the way he did, and that's the way it goes. And Double T, thanks so much. Thanks so much for the phone call, but we've got to go on to our next call. Thank you so much for calling today. I really, really appreciate it. Wayne in Memphis, you're on the line. You're on with ATL Prime Sports with TC and JJ. How you doing today?
Well, I was doing better before last night's loss to Oregon.
Hey, that's okay. Kentucky lost to Evansville.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, I've got a feeling that Evansville loss will be forgotten by the time March rolls around. So,
and could spring Evansville. You know, they were ranked 8th in their conference going into that game. What an absolute victory for Evansville.
Yeah, there'll be something to look at, definitely, in their conference and going forward when it comes time to choose the teams for the tournament, whether it be the NIT or the NCAA tournament.
Wayne, they out-hustled them. They out-coached them. They outplayed them. The discipline was there. And Kentucky, to me, the effort was not there. I think they took Evansville lightly, and they got burned.
Yeah. All right. Well,
what about Memphis, in your opinion?
Well, the basketball team is they're doing fine. The coaching's fine. The playing's fine. They just got the question of Wiseman, which has now recently gone down to the high school level. You know, that this whole incident with his family being assisted and moving to Memphis, they're saying that they may strip one of their championship seasons from their high school that Hardaway was coaching at.
Yeah, see that. They're getting in depth with this stuff. So
yeah, I had always thought that one of the better things about Tubby Smith being the coach was that there was absolutely zero NCAA infractions or even hints of them. And I think it's mainly because he really stayed away from all of the boosters and all of the people like that. And that was one of the reasons why I think they fired him, was because he wouldn't rub elbows with them.
Well, you know what? That's interesting, because this is going to get real deep, gentlemen. I mean, think about this. That they're saying, that Memphis took a huge risk playing this kid Wiseman, that, they might have to forfeit games and not be eligible for the NCAA tournament. I don't know what's going to transpire. You never know about the NCAA. They're not really that consistent at times, and at other times they're really consistent. I have no clue what they're going to do here.
Yeah, this is going to be huge. This is going to be, as Eddie Murphy would say in Beverly Hills Caught, they're going to go deep, deep, deep undercover. So deep.
They are. I mean, Wayne, what do you think? Do you think Memphis should play Wiseman or sit him out?
That's a coaching decision, and I'm not going to question the coach's decision, because I'm sure he's doing it with the consultation of the university as well as his other coaches. So
that's an excellent answer. I like that answer. I mean,
you're
not in the everyday operations of Memphis, and us, we can sit here and give our opinion, but honestly, it really doesn't matter because they're going to make the decision what's best for the team. And, I just hope this works out in a positive manner for Memphis, because what Penny Hardaway has done in a short period of time is he's really brought some serious excitement to Memphis basketball.
Yeah, well, I will say from a fan's point of view, I would rather see Wiseman play than not. So that's just a selfish fan point of view. Going over to football real quick, Memphis has to play Houston, and then they've got to play South Florida and then Cincinnati. Cincinnati is going to be a huge game for Memphis to see where they fall in the bowl game situation. Wow. But I would have never thought that Houston was going to be the team that we would not, be concerned about, and that teams like SMU would be. Because Houston I don't think it's going to be as serious. Hopefully they have their head on straight when they go down there to Houston. But the big game coming forward for Memphis as far as football is going to be Cincinnati's last game of the season. And one note about Ohio State: how far are they going to drop when they get beat by Michigan?
Wayne, that is music to my ears. I'm dreaming about it. But, if they do get beat by Michigan, their playoff chances would be in serious jeopardy. There's no question about that.
Very much so. Yeah. Wayne, I want to ask you a quick question. I know you're on social media, and I'm sure you saw the video in the locker room as Coach O was addressing his team after the emotional win against Alabama. What do you feel about his comments towards the team and derogatory statement, Roll Tide? Did you hear that?
Well, first of all, you've got to understand that one of the teams that I dislike the most in the SEC is LSU, being an Auburn fan. And you would think it would be Alabama, but it's not. I don't really care much.
Person that said that.
I don't really care much about Alabama. I definitely don't like LSU. And so really, I didn't catch any of that and didn't even know about it till I'm listening to your show, because I don't, it's not hitting my radar.
Yeah, if you Google it, you can. I'm sure you can still find
catch
the
it on
video.
If you go to my Twitter account and go under the like section, I did hit like, and you'll be able to hear it. So,
yeah, I'll check it out later on. But like,
go and look at it. Go ahead.
Yeah, you've got to understand. You got to understand though that Auburn fans are a lot different than Alabama or LSU or especially Tennessee fans. We don't really get into the whole nitty gritty. Look at what they did. What's that guy's probably that kind of thing. And so, I think we're a little bit more laid back.
You know what? Another big story in college football, if I may say, gentlemen, is that Tua's a game-time decision for this Saturday's game. We mentioned earlier in the broadcast that he tweaked his ankle. I'm wondering if Alabama's going to play him and hold him out and rest that ankle until the Auburn game. I mean, if they get behind or something, they might stick him in. But they're not in jeopardy this week, huh?
They don't need to play him against Mississippi State.
No, I don't think so neither. But you know what? The coaching staff, Nick Saban and them, they've got 100% gauge with the doctors of what's going on. So, I really can't. Yeah. I can't criticize them if they play, it really doesn't matter. They're going to make the decision what's best for the team. There's just a lot of great things.
If you're gonna, I'm gonna make one last comment, then I'll be off. But since you brought up the Tua situation, I'd be interested to know if the NCAA has any interest in how his family got moved from Hawaii to Alabama and how his father ended up with a job in Alabama.
I do not know what they do for a living. I have no clue.
Yeah, well,
it makes you wonder.
Yeah. Who would the NCAA like to look at, and who do they stay away from?
If the NCAA has a sniff on anybody, they'll go after them. They do not discriminate who they go after. They will go after anybody.
Well, Wayne, I got you on the phone real quick. It's the Deep South Soldus rivalry. It's a big one this weekend. Give me a quick score prediction before we let you go.
Well, you got to remind me which one it is, man.
Georgia versus Auburn, man.
Oh, Georgia-Auburn? That's not really a rivalry. That's a game we're afraid of, both teams. Everybody tiptoes into that game, man. I wouldn't call that a rivalry as much as I would like just a haunted house. You want to go in, you got to go in.
Tell us.
I've got Auburn winning that game just based on the fact that I'm an Auburn fan and Georgia's got some injuries.
You know what? We'll be talking about that shortly, about the injuries for Georgia. That's an excellent point, Wayne. Thanks for saying that, and we'll talk to you down the line. Thanks for calling in, as always.
Wayne from Memphis, Tennessee, we appreciate it as always. Guys, give us a shout-out if you're listening out there, 720-707-2699. Once you're in, the meeting ID is 179-057-108. We are working on it. The guy behind the boards is working on a number that we can just call in directly. We're going to try and build this thing from the ground up, listeners. So the ones, Wayne, Lou, whenever you come back, Lou, and Double T, the ones that have stayed with us. So we appreciate all the listeners that are out there right now listening that we don't know about as well. We appreciate all you guys. So we will get to Dave Chohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers, momentarily once he gets in. Until then, let's talk about those Panthers for a little bit. TC, they're doing pretty good. They're 6-3. They have a big time game this weekend, and wouldn't you know it, we'll welcome in Dave Chohen to the show right now, voice of the Georgia State Panthers. Dave, welcome back. ATL Prime Sports. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty good, guys. How you guys doing? Getting ready for a very busy weekend here with Georgia State football and basketball. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, you get the double dip, Dave. That's awesome.
Yeah, it'll be quite an adventure this weekend because we leave tomorrow, Thursday, for Durham, and basketball plays its third game of the regular season at Duke at Cameron Indoor Stadium, which is part of the 2K Classic that Georgia State's playing in. And then we'll come back here on Saturday morning. Originally, that Georgia State-Appalachian State football game was to be a 2 o'clock start. National television moved it to 7:30, so we'll have a little bit of time to kill during the afternoon. And that'll be Saturday night. And then Sunday morning, head back up to Washington, D.C. for Game 2 of that 2K Classic. Georgia State will play at Georgetown. And then we'll come back on Monday. So, again, a very adventurous weekend. It'd be obviously great to go 3-0, but we're going to take it one game at a time from my standpoint.
You're listening to Dave Chohen here on ATL Prime Sports. Dave, let's get right to let's just skip the Georgia State loss to Louisiana Monroe. We know what happened. They couldn't stop the run. They were torched on the run. Let's just go right into the big game this week, if you don't mind. The Dan Ellington injury, he is out because of a knee injury. Who will play quarterback, and will this change the offense?
Well, it changes the offense, definitely. I mean, you're trying to replace one of the top quarterbacks in the Sun Belt Conference. He sustained a knee injury in the first half out in Monroe last Saturday night. Cornelius Brown, a true freshman from Calera, Alabama, which is just outside of Birmingham, came in and played that second half. And, he doesn't have a whole lot of playing experience, not a lot of playing time. And I think he ended up 2 of 8 in the second half throwing the football. Now, we ran for a school record 414 yards. Running the football, not a problem. As a matter of fact, Georgia State currently 6th in the country in FBS football in rushing yards a game, 274.7 yards a game. So, originally, you were preparing to try to defend the pass and the run. Obviously, we're not going to be able to throw the ball quite to the level that we were with Dan as your starting quarterback. So Georgia State's going to have to rely a little heavier on the run. And so if you're Appalachian State, you're already a really good team defensively. To be honest, it kind of makes their job a little bit easier, so to say, as far as the preparation goes. And for Georgia State, again, no Dan Ellington. There's a number of other injuries that were sustained. I tell you what, that trip to Monroe was very, very costly, not just in the loss column, but with regards to player personnel, just the players that we lost. We lost another team captain for the year, Starting safety Remy Lazarus with a knee injury as well, so he's out for the year, which I know is only 3 more regular season games and hopefully a bowl game. But to lose the players that they did this past weekend really puts a little bit of a strain, in my opinion, on this football team. Again, we gave up 45 points to a Louisiana Monroe team that was 3-5, but we knew had a potent offense. And so now in your next 3 games, your final 3 games, you got Appalachian State here, you got South Alabama here. So you see the best and you see really the bottom of the Sun Belt, and then we got to go to Georgia Southern on November 30th with, that's always an adventure in and of itself. So I just wish we didn't have all these injuries.
Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers, football, baseball, basketball. Dave, a big part of this Georgia State team offense has been the play calling of Brad Glenn, a Broyles Award finalist. How has this first-year offensive coordinator turned this offense around?
Well, he's, the first part has been the buy-in from the players that were here. Travis Trickett, the previous offensive coordinator, left Georgia State to go back to his home state. He's the offensive coordinator at West Virginia. And so Coach Elliott had coached previously with Coach Glenn when the two were a little younger and on the staff of Jerry Moore up at Appalachian State, of all teams to be on the staff of. And that's where Coach Elliott played. So they knew one another. And one of the things that we talked about with Coach Glenn in one of the podcasts that I do each week called the Panther Insider, and Coach Glenn was the most recent one that we recorded and posted, was just the trust factor from both sides. When Coach Trickett left and went to West Virginia, obviously Coach Elliott needed to bring someone in here who could maximize the offense's ability with a mobile quarterback like Dan Ellington, with a stable of running backs like we have, and a stable of wide receivers and tight ends. Scoring this year has not been a problem, as I mentioned. 6th in rushing, 14th in total offense at 485 yards on average a game, and number 23 in FBS in the country in scoring at 36 points a game. The personnel was here. First of all, you needed the buy-in from the players. You needed the trust from both sides, players to coach, coach to players. And then I'm sure he had to go in, watch film, kind of get to learn and know these players. And one thing he said on the podcast was there was the period of adjustment and the period of getting to know one another that took place upon his hiring at the end of last year and then throughout all summer was very smooth, really very smooth. So, it's made it a lot easier for the so-called install and any changes that they were able to, that they had, come up with on offense. And Georgia State's been very balanced offensively all year. From when you look at the numbers from pass to run, it's been a perfect balance. And, to be honest, we're 6-3. If Dan doesn't get hurt on Saturday night, I think we've got a good shot to win that ball game. But the one that I wish we had won was Texas State back about a month ago in San Marcos. I mean, at this point right now, instead of being 6-3, we'd be 7-2. But we're not, and so an offense that was averaging 36 is now going to have to rely heavily on the run game, and the defense is going to have to really step it up against a very, very potent Appalachian State team and come up with some big plays.
Speaking of a potent team, you're listening to Dave Cohen here on ATL Prime Sports, the voice of the Georgia State Panthers. Talk about a defense that stepped it up. App State, they came off the loss. App State had lost to Georgia Southern and then turned around next week and got their second Power 5 win, beating South Carolina with a fabulous defensive effort. They lost the chance at the Cotton Bowl, but they still have a chance at the Sun Belt, and it's going to be a mighty tough task for Georgia State against this App State defense.
No question. They're going to have to deal with one of the best quarterbacks in the Sun Belt in Zach Thomas. He completes about 62% of his passes. He's got 14 touchdown passes thrown this year. He's only been intercepted 4 times. And even though he doesn't necessarily look like it, like Dan or like Caleb Evans, who we saw at Louisiana Monroe, he does have 5 rushing touchdowns and averages 4.5 yards a carry. So another dual threat quarterback for Appalachian State. And then they've got one of the top running backs in the Sun Belt in Darrington Evans. He's got 10 rushing touchdowns, 883 yards, and he's averaging 5.4 yards a carry. And I'm not even running down any receivers or any tight ends. They've got a very potent running back, a running game with a very potent running back and one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the Sun Belt. I mean, they're not 8-1 and 4-1 in conference play because they don't have good personnel. This is by far and away the best team in the Sun Belt we're going to see Saturday night.
You're listening to Dave Chohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers, right here on ATL Prime Sports. Dave, let's shift sports here. You're a busy man. The Georgia State men's basketball team takes on the Duke Blue Devils Friday. Give us your breakdown of that game versus Coach K and the Blue Devils.
Well, I mean, as you can imagine, they're the number 1 team in the country now that Kentucky fell last night to Evansville. They're loaded at every position. We have an old saying at Georgia State. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you guys, and I don't take total credit for it. But when you jump up and play a Power 5 and a top 5, top 10 team like a Duke or a Kentucky or a Kansas, the saying that we've used on more than one occasion, and we'll use this in this case for Duke, Duke has a roster loaded with McDonald's All-Americans. Georgia State, although some very, very good players, we've got players that like to eat at McDonald's. And that therein can kind of give you a little bit of the difference in the player personnel between the two. One thing about Georgia State, we're 1-1. I mean, they opened up with a win, an easy win over Bruton Parker, which I'm not even sure why that game was scheduled. And then they go to College of Charleston on Saturday. I didn't see that game because I was with football in Louisiana. But it was clearly a game that they coulda, woulda, shoulda won. They ended up leaving College of Charleston with a 4-point loss, 84-80. But, there's a lot of folks, both nationally and locally, that if you keep up with Georgia State, even from afar, have kind of come up with the equation that Georgia State men's basketball minus Ron Hunter, who, of course, now is the head basketball coach at Tulane, minus the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year in DeMarcus Simons, who exited the program a year early, and then 4 seniors, 2 of them who are on G League rosters with Milwaukee and with Utah. And I think they just thought Georgia State basketball was going to really, really tumble off the top of the Sun Belt mountain that we've been sitting on here for 3 or 4 the last 5 years. And I just don't think that's going to be the case. Rob Lanier comes in and takes over. Granted, his approach is a little different. Coach Hunter was very loud, very boisterous. You always knew when Coach Hunter was in a room. Coach Lanier gets his message across, but he's just a little bit more subdued about, when going about his business. You notice him, but you don't notice him the same way you did when you were in an arena and you were watching Ron Hunter. And I'm not saying either one is better than the other. I'm just saying they're different. But with the personnel that they brought in and the personnel that was returning with Kane Williams and Damon Wilson, both who have Sun Belt and NCAA tournament experience, and then a couple of transfers that they had sitting out, Corey Allen from the University of Detroit, Justin Roberts from DePaul. They brought in 2 freshman big men, 6'9", 6'10". Nelson Phillips was on the all-freshman team last year in the Sun Belt. Georgia State, now I'm not saying they're definitely going to, be the top dog in the Sun Belt, from start to finish, but the drop-off is not going to be, in my opinion, once we get into this thing, more than 2 games, it's not going to be quite what a lot of people thought that it would be based on what we lost and not really knowing what was returning and not really knowing much about what Coach Lanier and his staff were bringing in.
Listen to Dave Chohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers. TC, got any final thoughts for Dave?
Saturday.
We lost you for a second. Repeat that question for us.
Dave, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
I apologize. Since you can't take me and JJ to the games on Friday and Saturday, tell us how we can listen to each game on Friday and Saturday.
Well, all three games. Sunday we got to go back to Washington, and then Sunday night we play at Georgetown in the second game of that 2K Classic before they head out to California to play the final two games. I won't be going to California with them because I've got football here in Atlanta. But anyway, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, all three games can be heard in Atlanta on 88.5 FM WRAS. And then also streaming it on that TuneIn radio app as well as GeorgiaStateSports.com. But local radio in Atlanta will be on 88.5 FM WRAS. For Duke Friday night, Appalachian State football on Saturday night, Georgia State at Georgetown on Sunday night.
Well, Dave, thanks a lot. Once again, good luck this weekend. Maybe we'll get a W like Evansville did against Kentucky. Georgia State will get that against Duke, and then on Saturday they'll go ahead and beat App State in football, and you'll have a double dip of chocolate on that fudge sundae.
That'd be awesome to pull from a hockey term. How about a hat trick? Let's get a win Friday night at Duke, Saturday night at home against Appalachian State, and then wrap it up Sunday with a win at Georgetown. That'd be awesome.
And speaking of hockey, I've got the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets versus the Auburn Tigers on Friday night over at the Atlanta Ice House, and I can't wait for that matchup also. Thanks a lot, Dave.
All right, appreciate it. Somewhere down the line, I hope Georgia State brings back their club hockey team. I saw them play a couple of 3 times back in the 80s, and I know they had it back a few years ago, but for whatever reason, they've not been able to sustain that program. But they would make a nice addition, I think, to I think it's still called the Southern Collegiate Hockey Association. But I really wish Georgia State was up.
That is correct. That's exactly what it's called. Georgia Tech is ranked 8th in the South. Auburn is ranked 15th. Auburn did beat Georgia Tech on September 14th, 6-4 at Auburn, and now Georgia Tech needs to return the favor. They did start out by winning 7 of their first 8 games this season, and they've skidded, going 1-3-1 in the last 5. So we'll see if they can turn that around. Also, we gotta support all the local teams here.
Yeah, someday hopefully Georgia State will be back on the ice, but not right now.
I'm looking forward to that. That would be awesome. Thanks, Dave. You take care.
All right, thanks for having me. We'll talk to you next week, hopefully.
Yes, sir. That was
Go
Dave
Panthers.
Chohen, the voice of the Georgia State Panthers here on ATL Prime Sports. JJ, boy, I tell you, before we get into the Georgia-Auburn game, this Georgia State deal, these are huge games for this university. I mean, they've got Duke and hoops. They've got App State and football downtown. I mean, and then they can play, like Dave said, they play Georgetown. I mean, this is fantastic for that university, don't you think?
Very much so. Lots of national recognition, lots of national primetime audience, especially on Saturday night on ESPNU. But again, we would like you guys to check it out. And I did hear on the radio, I think the game's going to be on 92.9 The Game here in Atlanta on Saturday night. So it's pretty big. Let's go on quickly. Let's go.
Let's talk about the Georgia-Auburn game. Yeah, I'm sorry, JJ. We'll just go ahead and talk about the Georgia-Auburn game, breaking down the South's deepest rivalry. And I'll tell you what, give me your keys to the game, JJ, and the prediction.
The prediction I have.
Your keys to the game and a prediction. I'm sorry you didn't hear me.
Yeah, it's all right. No worries. We're getting used to this thing here. The prediction for me, I think it's going to come down to the trenches. It's going to come down to the defensive lines on both sides of the football. Both defensive lines are in the top 5 in college football right now, and in terms of what they're doing. You look at Georgia, they lead the SEC in every statistical category defense can buy. So they lead the league in rushing, and that's what both these teams want to try and do. So whoever wins the line of scrimmage, whoever controls the clock. I was just reading an article. Georgia's one of the slowest moving teams in college football, meaning they only run a play about once every 30 seconds, whereas most other teams are running this up-pace, fast tempo. Georgia doesn't do that. for those of you who like a 9-6 type game, this may be it. This very well may be it. The under is jumping very, very much. It started out like 45. I noticed it's down to around 40. So the under is jumping down, which is something I've never seen move that much in a while. Georgia's a 2.5-point favorite. I think that's about right. It's a Deep South Soulless rivalry, as we called it. It has been played almost every year except for World War I, World War II, and something else. But Georgia's a little edge, and this thing means a lot. I like Georgia. I like the offensive line. I like the ability of DeAndre Swift to make things happen in this game. See the keys to the game.
Well, JJ, you know what? It ought to be one heck of a matchup, man. You know, you got to remember the injuries that Georgia sustained on the offensive line was absolutely tremendous. You know, hopefully, you know, they call it the Great Wall of Georgia, but you know, we'll see if they can, you know, get by with the injuries. Kirby Smart was saying that the injuries are minor and that they're not serious, but, you know, I wonder if Cager is going to be able to play. He's their best wide receiver. And if he's out this week against Auburn, you know, their win percentages drop, in my opinion. He's that big of a key to the passing game. I haven't heard one way or another if he's going to play.
Well, last week after the game against Missouri, he did mention that every single one of those players could have came back into that game, but they did not.
That's good because
except for one of them did come back. I believe Cade Mays came back. One of them I got confused, but there is no timetable as far as I'm concerned as saying Will in this game. As far as
you know what, Jay,
according to the press, Kirby Smart, he should play in this game.
You know what, JJ? You know, the defense has proved itself time and time again. I know the offense does have limitations in the passing game. Championships are won on defense. Think about it. They lost their best wide receiver, their center, and their backup center due to an injury. And they also lost their best tackle on the line of scrimmage. So, you know, they're going to be tested severely by that Auburn defensive line, which is one of the best in the country. I'm expecting this to be a very, very low-scoring game, and whoever can run the ball, and whoever can run the ball for the most yards and not turn it over, to me, is going to be the winner. It really comes down to that.
Absolutely. Georgia's only allowed one team to score 17 points on them. It's South Carolina, and that was 20 points. It took overtime, and they also had a pick six in that game. So technically you could take away 7 points and say they only gave up 13 points on the defense side of the football. So
you know,
this
technically,
Georgia defense – go ahead.
You're right. Technically, you could say that, but, you know, here's the thing. I think this is going to be the toughest game that Georgia plays all year long. They're going into a hornet's nest. We all know about the Malzahn situation in Auburn. You know, you already had to say, you know, the Arkansas position, as we know, is open. His name has been mentioned. He had to come out this week and say, I love Auburn. I think the pressure is immense on Malzahn to win this game. They've had a brutal schedule, has Auburn, and they need this win desperately. This, to me, is going to be Georgia's toughest game of the year. I think they'll be really tested.
Well, I was going to continue on saying that. And then
I couldn't hear you. There's too much static.
Sure. Yeah, you just keep on going on, and you look at the facts in this game. Georgia's got a better offensive line. We've mentioned that. It's better in recruiting over the past couple seasons. This is a big-time game for Kirby Smart and Metro. This is something that moved the program forward. You put like this. It tells you forward, hey, look, we're here to stay. That's what Kirby Smart said last year and the year before when he lost the national championship. Well, it's time to prove that. You got to step up. You got to win this football game. That's a big game. We can wrap it up with a couple of predictions. I do think Georgia wins this game. I think it will be by about a point. And I think it may be a last-second field goal. And that's the difference. What do you think, Scott? PC?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you want me to give you a winner, I'll give you the winner. I'll say the most desperate team is Auburn. They're desperate for a win, so I think that their defensive line is going to control Georgia's offensive line, and I think they're going to win the football game. I think it's going to be a classic. It's lost some really heartbreakers at Auburn. This could be one of those heartbreakers. I hope it's not, but that's what I'm seeing. And also, you know what? I was going to say that that Dave gave me a text. He told me that the Georgia State game is not going to be the game Saturday night due to a conflict with Washington. So
Okay.
we're not going to have the Georgia State football game. It's not going to be on 99 the game.
Well, thank you for that, Dave. I heard it on there today. And I was like, well, maybe it is on there. And we just didn't mention. I wanted to mention all the outlets. So, awesome. Well, let's move on. We got one more quick topic. Let's shift gears to the NFL. The Falcons pulled a mighty upset over the Saints, 26-9. Was the win worth it? And what will the Falcons do? Do they continue winning? What do they do? What do you think?
Well, this is going to be, of course the win was worth it. Any win is worth it. These players are not only playing for this season, but they're playing for next season. They're playing for their job. They have a slim to none chance at making the playoffs, closer to none. They're going to have to run the football, control the clock like they did to the Saints. Their offensive line is going to have to excel in that area. Freeman's going to have to get yards. Smith is going to have to get yards, and etc. On the defensive side of the ball, JJ, they finally had some sacks last week. I think they had 5 or 6. They were all over Drew Brees. They're going to have to do the same thing to right for the Carolina quarterback. They're going to have to follow them up and play a great defense again.
Yeah, we'll see what happens down the line. What they do from here. Will it or will it the Falcons finish? If they finish at 9-7 and they're in the playoff hunt, yeah, I think that win last over worth it. It comes down to what is go, or do they want to go ahead and try and win a championship? I don't know, but I think that's possible. Personally, I think that win's a fluke. I think it's maybe the fluke that stalled. Maybe the 3 coaching changes make all the difference in the world. We'll see. But all I got I just think unless they keep winning, that win will not be worth it because you're going to win the draft pick.
Well, anyhow, we're going to find out who wins the game. It's a must-win for the Falcons. They've got to win this game in order to keep their very, very slim playoff hopes alive. We'll see what happens. JJ, I've had a lot of fun today. It's been a great show. I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed it. I want to thank Dave Chohen for coming on the show this evening. I want to thank our callers, Wayne from Memphis, and I want to thank Double T from Metro Atlanta. I want to thank you for being my partner. I want to thank you for filling in for Stephanie. Greatly appreciate it. It's been a great show. I just want to end with this. I broadcasted the Miles Tuskegee University game on Saturday. Miles College versus Tuskegee University, Division II Western Conference Championship game in the SIAC conference. I had to play my play. You know what? That atmosphere was as good as any in Division I college football. Their stands might seat 15,000, but there had to be 35 to 40,000 people there. It was an absolute electric atmosphere. And if you ever get a chance to go to a game in the SIAC conference, run over to Tuskegee University and enjoy it. I just want to say that's it, everybody. I enjoyed it, Jay. JJ, have a great evening, and we'll talk to you next week. Good night, everybody.
Absolutely. Same time, same place next week, ladies and gentlemen. As always, thank you, Dave Chohen. Thanks for all of our callers. We'll see. Enjoy the weekend of big one. Until next time. With TC, I'm JJ. For Mark Mancini, Star Wars, direct behind the